Hello everyone, and welcome to this St John's Inspire interview workshop. This session is for Inspire pupils on the Year 13 Inspire programme. If you've applied to Oxford or Cambridge, or for some particular subjects at other universities, interviews might be something that you're invited to. If that isn't something you're doing this year during applications, then hopefully you'll still find the process of the Oxford interviews a helpful one, because it teaches you how to engage with content and think about it at a university level. And that's what these interviews are designed to test. They're nothing scary, they're designed to assess your potential and see how you enjoy working at that higher education level. This session will help you to explore the interview process and answer any questions that you might have, and will hopefully be really helpful for you for when you do transition to that higher education atmosphere next year. In this session, we're going to explore the logistics of the Oxford interview process, have a look at the different parts of the interview, and give you some top tips on how to prepare before answering some FAQs. So let's get started. As you can see on this slide, the University of Oxford has an application timeline that runs from the beginning of June, when you choose your course and begin writing your applications, through to offers being made in January. In this workshop, we're going to be focusing on the last part of your application, the interviews themselves. The interviews take place after you've submitted every part of your application. So once you've applied on UCAS, got all your predicted grades and references, taken the relevant admissions test if your course requires one, and submitted any examples of written work. If you are required to submit written work, this has to be sent to us by the 10th of November. After this, the shortlisting will take place. You'll be told if you're being invited to interview before December. The actual interviews themselves will take place online in the first few weeks of December. So, what is the interview? An interview is simply a discussion about the subject you love with people who love the subject as much as you do. The interviews are designed to test your academic potential. This means your interviewers are looking to see whether you have the potential to thrive in the Oxford academic environment, rather than a pop quiz about your current knowledge. The interview will stretch you beyond your current knowledge to examine your ability to think independently and critically, your self-motivation, commitment and enthusiasm for your course, as well as any subject-specific selection criteria. Why do we interview? Each year, Oxford has over 22,000 applicants for around 3,300 places, and approximately 10,000 candidates are shortlisted for interview. Another reason we interview is because a good deal of the teaching at Oxford takes place in small classes known as tutorials. They're called supervisions at Cambridge. And your interviewers, who may be your future tutors, are assessing your ability to study, think, and learn in this way. A tutorial is a small class where you discuss ideas with a few other students and a tutor. So it's good to think of the interview as a mini tutorial, where your tutors will be looking at your ability to study, think, and learn in this way. It's also important to note here that interviews are also your opportunity to work out whether this small-scale teaching environment is one that you'd like to be taught in for your 3 or more years at university. As much as you are being interviewed, it's also your chance to interview your tutors and college to see if it's right for you. We have some quotes from some of our tutors as to why we interview. So our medicine tutor says, interviews tell us important things about a candidate which are not captured by grades or test scores. We can see candidates think, not merely parrot information. And an Italian tutor says, interviews give us the chance to see whether an applicant has the intellectual capacity to learn and be stretched by our teaching system. Fundamentally, the question is this: can we teach this person in a tutorial situation, and will they thrive in this environment? Let's talk about the logistics of the interview, how and when they'll take place, and what you can expect. The interviews for 2022 will be taking place online. Each interview will last between 20 and 40 minutes. Most candidates will have 2 interviews, but you might find that you have more or less depending on your subject. You might also have one interview with 2 different colleges, and potentially with colleges that are different to the ones that you applied for. If you do find that your interview timetable differs slightly from this, don't panic. Different subjects and colleges require different things. If you are concerned, you can always speak to someone at your college who will help you. Interviews are normally held by 2 tutors who will have an interest in the subject that you're applying to. And in terms of the content of the interviews, they are academic, subject-focused discussions in which tutors want to see how you think when presented with new material. There is no dress code for the interview, and you're advised to wear whatever you feel comfortable in. Pre-reading is usually given to humanities and social science subjects, but can also be given to other subjects too. For English and language subjects, there will be a poem or piece of prose to consider. For history, a source document, law, a judgment extract, and for PPE, an economics puzzle. You will then be given a set amount of time to read your text. These pieces of pre-reading will then form the basis of a discussion in the interview itself. So it's a good idea to approach the text critically and make some notes or annotations of your text and know what you might want to talk about and any questions that you have. For the subjects that aren't given pre-reading, all discussion and topics covered will be presented during the interview itself. You can practice pre-reading ahead of your interview by finding a newspaper article, journal article, book, or poem that you've never seen before and spend 20 minutes reading, annotating, and understanding it. To really push yourself further, you could speak about the article to a teacher, friend, family member to get practice speaking about a text that you've never seen before. Once you know the time and date of your interview, it's a good idea to organise logistics. Talk to your school or college to confirm where your interview will be, whether you'd like to do it at home or if you can use an empty classroom at school. Next, it's a good idea to get comfortable with which tier of technology your subject requires. No candidate or their school is expected to purchase a touchscreen device in order to participate in their Oxford interviews. If you do require any assistance with accessing your interview, please do get in touch with your interviewing college or department and we can help you. Next, read about what you can expect from the process and have a look at the online code of conduct. And finally, be proud. Being shortlisted is a huge achievement in its own right. And if you do get invited, be confident. You've been invited for a reason. So now we're going to have a look at a breakdown of the interview process so you can know what to expect and begin preparing. I think this is a really good opportunity to do some Oxbridge myth busting. There are a lot of rumours and gossip surrounding the Oxbridge interview process. You know, rumours that your interview is going to throw something at you, and if you catch it, then you're in, and if you drop it, then you've lost your opportunity. This is not true. Your interviewers are not trying to catch you out, they're not trying to trick you. What they might do is ask you to talk about an unseen object, which we'll come on to, but they're not trying to catch you out. They want you to be relaxed so that you can engage in the academic discussion as fully as possible. Tutors want you to feel comfortable in your interview, so they might start with an icebreaker to get to know a little bit more about you. You can prepare for this by explaining to a friend or family member why you want to study your subject. Have a go at verbalising your answer, but don't worry, the interview is not a test of your public speaking skills. It's also a really good idea to reread your personal statement and any materials you mention ahead of the interview. Your personal statement gives the tutors an idea of which aspects of the subject you're interested in and the things that you've learned about and enjoyed. This means you're likely to be asked questions about your personal statement in the interview. To prepare for this, you can read through your personal statement and identify 2 potential interview questions and practice answering these questions to a teacher, friend, family member. Although you may have written about extracurricular activities in your personal statement, this is not the main topic to be explored in your interview at Oxford. Similarly, the tutors will not be looking to discuss the reasons why you've made a preference in your application for a particular college. As I said earlier, the interview itself is a predominantly academic conversation, so talking about college choice doesn't really come into it. We mentioned earlier that the tutors are not there to trick you, and this is true. What they might do is give you unseen material to have a look at. For example, if you study archaeology, the tutors might show you an artifact and ask you some questions about it. This is to help your tutors see how you think and react to unseen material, the type of materials that you might encounter during your studies. You can prepare for this through research, revision and practice, which we are going to come on to shortly. At the end of your interview, your tutors might ask you if you have any questions. This is your opportunity to ask any questions you have about the course, the college, or studying and living in Oxford. There's no pressure for you to ask any impressive academic questions, and remember you don't have to ask a question at all if you don't have one. We're now going to have a look at some ways you can prepare for your interview, focusing on research, revision, and practice. One of the things interviews test are subject-specific selection criteria. For example, biology. Biology tutors are looking for an enthusiasm for biology and potential to study it at university. The interviews are not designed to test factual knowledge. Instead, they show an applicant's ability to think and to understand the biological knowledge that they've accrued up to that point. So be prepared to talk about particular aspects of biology that you find personally interesting. The process is rigorous but sympathetic. Applicants may be asked to examine and comment on biological objects, or to interpret a written passage, or a simple set of data that will be provided during the interview. One way you can prepare for this is using the link on this slide. Select a university selection criteria guide. It doesn't have to be in your subject, and then write 2 to 3 bullet points of what the tutors are looking for in this subject. Then write 2 to 3 bullet points of the type of questions tutors might use to assess a candidate in this subject. Then, to really challenge yourself, have a go at answering these questions. Even better if you can do this out loud, as it will give you practice in answering questions about your subject. Pause the video now and have a go. Another step to prepare for your interviews would be to revise your topic. So revise your subject, reread any materials mentioned in your personal statement, and then read widely around your subject. For example, journal or newspaper articles, websites, podcasts, documentaries, anything which you enjoy and which expands your knowledge of your subject. Here is an activity that you can do to begin thinking about personal statements and any questions your interviewers might ask you. So read the personal statement extract from this geography student. Write down 2 questions a tutor could ask this candidate, and then think about how else this candidate could prepare ahead of their interview. If you'd like to push yourself, try doing the same thing for your own personal statement. Pause the video now and have a go. The best practice you can do to prepare for your interview is to speak about your subject out loud with teachers, classmates, friends, and family. It's important for you to practice speaking about your subject with others and engaging in academic discussion. Practice answering and discussing academic questions with clarity and focus. Engage your classmates in these sorts of discussions and see if your arguments make logical sense. In discussing these topics, you're also improving your ability to think flexibly and come up with new arguments and ideas. A good way of improving your argument skills is by taking a piece of A4 paper and filling one side with an argument that you're strongly in favour of, for example, on topics like equal pay, a literary concept, or a particular proof. Then flip the page over and fill the other side with an opposing argument, countering every point you made on the other side. Finally, you may be asked in an interview to talk in more detail about some of the ideas or topics that you've written about in your personal statement. So have a look at your personal statement and practice expanding on the ideas and topics that you've written about, using this exercise to speak out loud. This will also allow you to familiarise yourself with the experience of speaking out loud and help you feel more comfortable talking about your interests in this way. Here are some top tips for you to practice. Listen to the question you've been asked and answer that question. If you don't hear something or don't understand the question, just ask for clarification. As we've spoken about, talk through your working out loud and also take some time to think if you've been asked a question. There's nothing wrong with taking a few moments to think about the question you've been asked and what your answer might be. A good way to practice verbalizing your thought process is by using expressions such as, if we assume X, then Y, or what we do or don't know is, I might start with, and a really useful one, what I'm thinking is, because that really does help the tutors know what you're thinking. Top tip. Please don't try and second guess what the tutors are looking for. Just be yourself. We've already discussed they're not trying to trick you, so just answer the question you've been asked. So we've spoken about some of the things for you to do during the interview. Now for some things to try and avoid. Staying silent. It can be really tempting when you don't know an answer to not say anything, but this isn't a great tactic for interviews. The tutors can't read your mind, and remember, you're not supposed to know all the answers to everything. Your tutors want to see how you'll react to new material, so practice some of the tips we've given you about working through an answer verbally. Another thing to avoid is refusing to change your mind. It's really good to be confident in your answers, but if you're refusing to change your mind in the face of overwhelming evidence, this won't look good. In fact, it's a really important academic skill to admit when you're wrong and begin your reasoning again in the light of your mistakes and the new evidence. This ties in with listening to interviewer feedback. Your tutors will have a fuller knowledge of the topic you're discussing, so it's good to incorporate their advice. And finally, if you don't know the answer to a question, please don't make up an answer. Try having a go at reasoning through an answer, and if you still don't know, just ask for help. Remember, tutors want you to feel able to be yourself in the interview and allow you to demonstrate your skills and abilities. This activity is designed to help you think deeply about your subject. Look at an interview style question in your subject, or the closest subject available, and make 2 to 3 bullet point notes for an answer that you could give. Then, write a further question that a tutor could ask based on each of your bullet points. Try to also answer these further questions. Once you've written your answers to these questions, practice verbalizing them to get comfortable speaking about your subject and making arguments. And now for some final notes on interviews, including some FAQs and where to go to find out more. One question we get asked quite a lot is whether the interview is the only thing that we consider. When you apply for a place at Oxford University, we'll look at your application holistically, examining each part of your application. A part of this involves us looking at your grades in the context of your schooling and any challenges you might have faced. We also look at how well you as an individual have done in relation to your peers. For example, you might not have got straight nines across the board, but you may have received some of the best grades that your school has seen. If you have done significantly better with your grades than others in your year at school, we will be able to contextualise your grades with this in mind. And any familial or personal factors, such as being a carer, being in care, disability, or mental health issue, are taken into consideration when you apply, and these will be declared on your UCAS form. So another question that we get asked quite a lot is whether or not there's a hidden agenda. So this is something we've touched on throughout this presentation. Tutors do not have a hidden agenda when it comes to the interviews. They aren't trying to ask you trick questions or trip you up either. Interviews are intended to be an academic and genuine discussion where the tutors want to hear you speak and listen to your responses to new material. They would not be able to get a good idea of how you think if they were trying to trip you up. So trust that your tutor really wants you to do your best. Another misconception is that you're not allowed to ask for clarification or ask questions of your own during an interview. This idea that you should already know absolutely everything about your subject before you go to interview. This isn't true. If you knew everything already, there'd be nothing that your tutors could teach you. If there is some part of the discussion or a definition that you need clarifying, you are more than welcome to ask. By asking for clarification, you're still engaging with the topic you're discussing, and it's not viewed as a negative thing. Then finally, to recap what we're looking for at interview. Academic ability and potential are two of the top things that tutors will look for when you're in an interview. They want to see that you're able to take on the academic challenges that they ask of you in the interview, and that you have the potential to take on the challenges that your chosen course and the university have to offer. Potential is a very important word here. No applicant applying to university knows everything there is to know about their chosen subject. Tutors want to see that you have the potential to come to university and continue to learn and improve over the 3, 4, or 6 years of your chosen degree. Another skill that tutors will look for in an interview is your flexibility of thought and responsiveness to new material. At university, you will constantly come across new ideas, new critics, and cutting-edge research. In an interview, tutors want to be able to see that you can respond effectively with your own ideas and insight when approaching material that you've never seen before. In addition, tutors want to see that you can think clearly and critically about the material discussed. Whatever response you give, make sure that you're expressing your opinion in the most developed and clearest way possible. If this means that you need to take a few moments to gather your thoughts, then take those moments. Critical engagement is also important, and tutors will be looking at how you analyse, discuss, and evaluate the topics presented. And finally, tutors are looking to see enthusiastic engagement with new ideas. This does not always mean that they are looking for the right answer every time. They want to see you engaging with passion and thinking out loud rather than being afraid of getting something wrong. They understand that some of these ideas are ones that are beyond what you've already studied in school or college, so they'll be assessing your ability to interact enthusiastically with the ideas that they present. All of those qualities are ones that tutors will look for in interviewees, as these are the qualities that are required for tutorials, for classes, and for the courses that we offer at Oxford. Tutors are by no means looking for a smooth performance. And there'll be parts of the interview that may surprise you, or elements of the questions asked that you will find puzzling and need a moment to process. This is expected, and it's part of the interview process. Tutors are not interested in whether or not you're a good public speaker. It's the quality of the ideas that you express and the clarity and critical quality of your thoughts that the tutors find most important. We want you to express yourself clearly for the tutors to hear, but this is an academic conversation based on interaction and discussion. It's not a speech to a crowd. Another question we get asked about quite a lot is Opportunity Oxford. Opportunity Oxford is the university's brand new scheme for talented UK-based students from underrepresented backgrounds. Opportunity Oxford aims to prepare talented offer holders for their life at Oxford by cultivating high-quality academic skills and practice in students so they can hit the ground running when they take up their place at the university. This takes the form of a bridging scheme, where Opportunity Oxford students will participate in events prepared by the university. First, Opportunity Oxford students are invited on a welcome day in February, and then, upon confirming their grades and their place in the summer, will proceed to complete online bridging material and come to Oxford for a residential in September. At the residential, these students will get to meet other Opportunity Oxford students, explore Oxford, receive some pre-term time lectures, and get some tips on study skills that will set them up to jump into their studies at Oxford University. Opportunity Oxford students are made the standard offer for their courses and are admitted on the same rigorous basis as all other students. Once they begin their degree, they follow an identical degree programme, receive the same tuition, are assessed according to the same criteria, and are awarded a degree on the same basis as all other students. If you're wondering what it's actually like in an Oxford interview, have a look at what some of our own students have said about their experiences. Ankit, a third year English student, says, "The questions are hard but not inaccessible for A-level students. I was concerned they'd be odd or convoluted, but instead the questions were clear, sensible, and led to exciting answers. The tutors want you to do well. You're not just being assessed in your interviews, you're being taught. It's an opportunity. Try to enjoy it and your passion and enthusiasm will shine through." Even if you find it hard, it's all about giving it a go. As Marco, a 4-year physicist, says, the interview really is similar to the style of teaching at Oxford in those tutorials. You'll likely find it scary and stressful beforehand, but that's okay, everyone does, even those who pretend not to. In the interview, it's key to talk. The tutors can't read your mind. Even if you have no idea what's going on, try and come up with some general starting points and see where the tutors take you. And finally, please don't panic or worry about your interview. I know that's easier said than done, but they truly are just conversations about your chosen subject with someone who loves the subject as much as you do. And please remember, if you are being interviewed, then it's because you're a strong contender for a place. So, for a quick summary, how can you prepare for your interview in 4 steps? Step 1, research your interview criteria. Step 2, revise your subject and personal statement. Step 3, practice answering your questions and thinking out loud. And then for step 4, remember to confirm your interview logistics ahead of the day. Which brings us to the end of this interview workshop. If you have any questions regarding this presentation or at any stage of your Oxford application, then please do get in touch. You can email us to ask more about Oxford interviews and how you can prepare. Visit the university website for details on this year's interview and visit Inspire Digital to find further resources. Thank you very much for coming to this workshop and good luck with your interview.